In 1923, at the legendary Belmont Park, a horse won a major championship race. The twist? Its jockey was already dead in the saddle. Welcome to an explainer that dives into one of the most deeply mysterious and unbelievable events from the archives of sports history, a true story that will absolutely make you question the final limits of the human body. We're going to transport ourselves back to the high-stakes, dust-kicking world of the Belmont Park steeplechase.
Okay, let's dive into this with a question that honestly sounds more like a riddle. Can a horse win a championship race with a deceased jockey? Now, your immediate instinct is probably going to be to say, absolutely not, no way. The coordination, the core strength, the active guidance required to navigate a 1,000-pound animal over massive hurdles, it's just immense. But today, we're exploring an absolute physical impossibility that somehow became a reality.
Part 1, The Impossible Belmont Victory.
So, picture this. It's June 1923, and we're at the legendary Belmont Park in New York. The air is literally thick with anticipation. The stands are totally packed with people looking for a thrill, a lucky break, a real spectacle. But what they were about to witness was something nobody could have ever anticipated. Our story centers around this colossal, completely unexpected pairing facing massive 20-to-1 odds. That was the severe underdog status of a horse named Sweet Kiss. Honestly, betting on Sweet Kiss was basically seen as throwing your money away by the public. But hey, a horse is only half the equation in a steeplechase, right? The other half was a man who had everything to prove.
Part 2, Hayes the Lifelong Underdog.
At 35 years old, Frank Hayes wasn't exactly in the prime of a typical racing career. And more importantly, he wasn't even a famous jockey. He was just a humble stable hand and horse trainer, totally desperate for a breakthrough. He wanted just one chance to compete under those bright lights. Well, he finally managed to book a ride on Sweet Kiss. But to even qualify for this grueling race, Hayes had to push his body to the absolute brink. Step 1 was intense weight loss. He had to drop a massive amount of weight in a really short period just to meet the strict riding requirements. Step 2, the race kicks off. And remember, a steeplechase isn't some smooth sprint. It's a bumpy, high-jumping, incredibly violent ride. That brings us to Step 3, extreme physical stress. His 35-year-old body, already super depleted from the rapid weight loss, is now absorbing the massive shockwaves of this horse leaping and landing. And then, Step 4, the silent, fatal heart attack. Somewhere during the middle of all this chaos, right in mid-stride, Hayes' heart simply gave out.
Part 3, the silent mid-race tragedy.
I want you to try and picture the sheer sensory overload of that exact moment. You've got thundering hooves churning up the dirt, the wind roaring past, and the intense, unstoppable momentum of a steeplechase in full swing. And yet, right in the center of all that noise and kinetic energy, a silent tragedy was unfolding in the saddle. Frank Hayes was gone, right in the middle of the track. By all laws of physics and biology, what should have happened next is a tragic fall. But miraculously, Hayes didn't tumble to the ground. Against all odds, Sweet Kiss kept sprinting at absolute maximum speed. The horse didn't stop. It kept leaping over the final hurdles, navigating the dangerous track perfectly, all while Hayes remained clinging to the reins, completely motionless. You gotta wonder, how does a horse with a deceased rider maintain its form and actually finish a race?
Part 4, The Medical Miracle Explained. To understand how he managed to stay perfectly upright and not get thrown from the animal during a high-speed jump, we really have to look at the unique intersection of physics, equipment design, and human biology. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these three elements combine to create a perfect, albeit pretty grim, locking mechanism. First, there's the intense momentum of the race. The forward thrust of Sweet Kiss effectively pushed Hayes' weight back and firmly down into the seat. Second, the specific design of the steeplechase saddle, which is built to cradle the rider during massive jumps, acted almost like a mold around him. And third, the sudden onset of rigor mortis, or extreme muscle tightening.
Let's clearly define what happened here biologically. This sudden muscle tightening is a very rapid physiological phenomenon. Because Hayes' body was under such extreme physical exertion at the exact moment of his passing, it led to immediate muscle stiffening. His hands remained totally locked on the reins. His legs stayed braced against the horse. His deceased body's posture was literally locked into place by his final living act of exertion.
And this brilliantly illustrates the jarring reality of the finish line that day. On one side, you have the roaring crowd. They are in a state of absolute euphoric celebration.
I mean, a 20-to-1 underdog has just crossed the finish line in first place. Tickets are cashing out, people are screaming, it's wild. But then, on the other side, just yards away, is the silent rider, motionless, upright, and entirely deceased. It's two completely different realities existing in the exact same space.
Part 5. An unbreakable, bizarre record.
So Sweet Kiss had crossed that finish line victorious. Down in the winner's circle, the horse's owner, Miss Frayling, was overjoyed. Against all the odds, her horse had actually won. She rushed out of the stands and down to the track to celebrate this monumental upset, and obviously, to congratulate her jockey, the underdog who had finally gotten his big breakthrough. But it wasn't until she actually reached the horse that the horrifying reality set in. Hayes wasn't celebrating. Actually, he wasn't moving at all. When officials finally went to lift him down from the saddle, they discovered he was already gone. The shock that must have rippled through the officials and the owner is just almost unimaginable. The man they were cheering for had passed away long before he ever crossed the finish line.
So the crucial point is this. Frank Hayes had won the very first race of his life and cemented an unbreakable, truly bizarre world record, entirely after his heart had stopped beating. It's a testament to the brutal demands of the sport, the strange physics of the saddle, and a human body pushed so far past its limit that it literally locked its final triumphant posture into stone. He achieved his lifelong dream, but the tragic part is he was never able to know it.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder today. When human determination, that desperation for a breakthrough, the willingness to push through extreme weight loss and intense physical stress, when that collides with the absolute final limits of the human body, what bizarre history is left behind? Frank Hayes left behind a medical mystery and a sports record that fundamentally will never be broken. It really makes you wonder, what other impossible feats are locked away in the archives of history, just waiting to be explained? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.